Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I add texture to my lettering using Adobe Illustrator. So I know a lot of us are loving the Procreate app and we love the aesthetic that it lets us create for our lettering, but I want to show you that you can still create that same aesthetic and that same Procreate look by using Adobe Illustrator. And in this case, I'm going to use brushes. I got these brushes off of Design Cuts and it's the Gouache brush set, and I hope I'm saying that correctly because that's a really hard word to say. But yeah, this brush set comes with 52 Illustrator brushes, and in this tutorial, I'm going to use those brushes to really make my lettering pop and add texture to it. So let's jump right into this tutorial. And if you're interested in using those brushes, I'll put the link in the description below. And yeah, let's get started on the tutorial. Since we're working in Illustrator, you're going to need to vectorize any lettering that you want to work with. I've already went ahead and taken some lettering I already created, and I vectorized it. So now we can start adding shaders to our lettering. What I like to start off with is I like to save and import a color palette that I want to use. So I've already saved out a color palette and I'm going to attach it here. So this original layer is my illustration. I don't need that anymore, so I'm just going to leave it off. And in the layer above that, I'm going to add the background color, which I want it to be this light beige color. So now that I have the light beige color, I will lock that layer and I'm going to label that background layer. Next, what I want to do is I want to expand everything. So I want to make sure that I expand all of the strokes that I have on here. So the stuff that hasn't been expanded is like deadlines, maybe these clouds, the sun. So I'm going to go ahead and expand these things. So I'm going to expand deadlines first, and then unite those paths with the Pathfinder Unite button, and then the same thing with the ribbon. And some of these I'm going to leave as just paths. For now, I'm going to leave this as is. For the sun rays, I'm going to expand those. So as I'm working along, I will expand or not expand depending on which brush tool I'm using. Before I get started, I'm actually going to import the Gouache shader brush set from Design Cuts. So I got this brush set because I thought it was a really cool brush set to add texture to my lettering in Illustrator. So I know a lot of people don't have an iPad and maybe they don't have access to that and maybe they just have Illustrator. I thought this was a great way to show you that you can still create those really cool styles like Procreate styles in Illustrator. So I am using the Gouache shader brush set from Design Cuts. The way you import the brush file is you're going to go to Window, you're going to go all the way down to Brush Libraries, and then you're going to click Other Library. And then wherever you've saved that folder or your download, I'm going to go to that download, and it's right here. And then I'll double click that, and then click the Brush Library files and CC. And now I have my brushes right here. So these are all of the brushes that come with this brush set in Design Cuts. It comes with all of these different lines. So these ones can be used for the paths, and these can also be used for paths. It just depends on how you use them. They are being used on every outline or every path that you apply it to. So for example, let's say I want to make Rise and Grind. Let's make it pink. And then I apply one of these. You'll see that it makes it rough, and it's only applying it to the outline or the path in that lettering. So it depends on which one you want to use. And the way you can manipulate it is you can reduce the stroke size. I'm going to select it and reduce the stroke size so it looks a little bit rugged, which I like that. That's kind of the aesthetic you can get with the iPad or Procreate. And then you can just kind of play around with the different brushes. So these brushes are being applied to my lettering. So I kind of like that. And again, you can just play around with it as much as you like. So I want to make it just a little bit rugged. You can see it's kind of barely noticeable, but I want to keep it like that. And then maybe for deadline, I want deadlines to be red and tackling to be yellow, the sun to be yellow. And again, I'm just playing around with the colors, and of course feel free to, play around with whatever colors that you like. These are just the ones that I wanted to use. So you can see we haven't really added any of these textures yet, but I'm going to show you how they work. So for the clouds, I'll show you. I'm going to select them all, and if I click on any of these, so these brushes on the top are essentially adding the texture all around the stroke or all around that path. And you can see it goes all the way around. So depending on how big your stroke is, that's how much texture will show up. So you can see the smaller I make the stroke, the less of that texture showing up. But again, I'm going to play around with these, and I'm going to make these lines maybe something like this. And again, feel free to play around with whatever you like. And then I'm going to play around with the lettering, and then this is when I'm going to be adding these textures. So for the sun, I had saved the circle because I wasn't sure if I wanted to fill it, but I'm actually going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to fill it in with the yellow, and then I'm going to duplicate that circle. So I'm going to do it on the side. And this is how I'm going to add shadow and use those shaders. So I have these two circles. I'm going to make one have no fill and no stroke. So it's the circle still there, but you can't see any of those things. And then we have our yellow circle. And then I'm going to add some shade. So I'm going to grab the pen tool, and I'm going to draw a path on my sun. And I want it to be a darker orange, that way we could see it. And then this is where you can play around with the textures. So you see I've added this path, and you can see which one works better for you, which one you like best. So I like this one. I'm going to reduce it a bit. So this is the one I really like. I'm going to make it a bit bigger. And again, I want it to be like the shadow on the sun. And then I want to add another one maybe on the right side. And this time I want it to be a bit lighter. And again, you can choose which shaders you like the best. So I think this one looks pretty good. I'm going to reduce that size though. And again, you can just keep adding as much as you want, because as soon as I'm done, I'm going to create a clippy mask for all of this. So I want to add maybe a darker one on the bottom. And I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to select all of those, and I'm going to group them, and then I'm going to bring my circle on the left side and put it over directly. Now I can pretty much move my yellow one out of the way. And I have my circle and my layers. So I want to make sure my circle is above, so make sure you click on Object, Arrange, and bring to front, and then select them all and click Control-7, and you've created a clippy mask. You can also just go to Object, Clippy Mask, and then Make. And then I'm going to place that over my sun, and now we have a sun with texture, which looks really cool. And I like to just group it, that way it's just easy to grab it and move it around. So I'm going to place it over here. We have my sun, and I'm going to remove that layer. That was just the stroke. Now what you could do with this is you could actually select the top layer, the layer that you've made the clipping mask. So I have to make sure I select it. And you can see this little button on the right side. If you pull it and move it around, you can change the shape of the circle and maybe cut off a piece of it. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do the same with the clipping mask. So you can see that now it's half of a circle, so half of the sun that I wanted to show. So now that I've done that, I'm going to select my sun rays, and I want them to be that dark orange as well. Just like that, and I just added this little simple one on the bottom. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to actually make the rise and grind. I want to give it a 3D look, so I'm going to grab this and copy and paste it over here just to make that 3D look. And then what you're going to do next is you're going to copy and paste it again, and then place it above and put it at an angle on which way you want the angle or the shadow to go. So this is going to be like the shadow or the 3D part of the letters. So once I have this, I'm going to want to connect these two layers. So the way you do it is you select both of them, and then you're going to go to your tool panel over here and click on the blending tool over here. And then just from each corner, just kind of connect it like this, pull it from one side to the other, and then you're going to double click on this section over here, double click on the blending tool, and then you're going to click on specified steps. And then I put 20, click OK, and now we have this layer. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Object, Expand Appearance. So once you've expanded the appearance, you're going to go to Object and click Expand Appearance again, and then we're going to click on that and click on Unite in the Pathfinder. So now it's all one layer, and then I'm going to grab the color from my colors, and then now we can place that behind Rise and Grind. And place that in the back. And now we have our 3D Rise and Grind. So now that we have our sun pretty much done, I am going to play around with the star placement right now. So I kind of saved out how I wanted the stars to look. So I'm going to pull this way. So now that I have my stars pretty much placed where I want them to go, I'm actually going to move on to deadlines. So now I'm going to teach you a different way to add texture to your lettering. There's various ways to do clipping masks, but this is a different way you can add a clipping mask. So again, I'm going to grab deadlines, I'm going to duplicate it. Now I'm going to work with it on this side of the screen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the pen tool. You can press P, or you can go over to this toolbox on the left side and grab the pen tool. And then I'm going to draw a line across. And I want it to be that dark red, so I'm going to select it from my color palette. And then I'm going to choose the texture, and I want it to be this texture. And I'm going to bring it down, reduce the stroke size. And then I want to make sure deadlines is above. So I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. And then I'm going to select deadlines. You're going to have to select deadlines and then click Object, Ungroup. And because deadlines consists of 1, 2, 3 different objects, it's not all one path together. You have to actually make that into a compound path. So you're going to go to Object and scroll down to Compound Path and click Make. So now that deadlines is a compound path and it's above our texture, you're going to select it all and click Control 7. And now we have our texture. So now you'll notice that our background color is gone. So an easy way to grab it is just double click on the word. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to grab the eyedropper tool, and then I'm going to select the red from my color palette. And now our red is the background. So that's another really easy way to add the textures and use a clipping mask. So I'm going to bring this over here. And then I can delete the one below. So I'm just going to move this to the side. And then I'll click delete. So now we have our texture for deadlines. So the second word I'm going to add texture to is the tackling. So the and the tackling. So I'm gonna select this, and I'm gonna duplicate it again. I like to work with it on the side. Okay, so now that I have and tackling here, I'm gonna add the texture the same way I did before. So I'm gonna grab the pen tool. You can press P and then create a straight line across. And then I want this line to be a darker orange, so I'm gonna pick from the color picker. And then I'm going to select the shader, and I think I'm going to select this one. So I'm going to bring it down. So the same as before, we want to make sure our word is above the texture. So I'm going to select it all, click Object, Arrange, and Bring to Front. And then I want to ungroup it. Now that it is ungrouped, then I'm going to select every single letter. And again, we want to create a compound path. So you click Object, Compound Path, and then click Make. And then we're going to select the entire thing and then click Control-7. And then we have our texture. And again, because our color is gone, you'll just have to double click on the word. So now that I've double clicked it, I'm going to grab the eyedropper tool and then click on my yellow. And now we have our texture. So then I'm going to grab this and bring it over here and put it right above, and then I can delete that other layer. And really easy. That was super, super easy. Now we can continue to add texture to the rest of the word. So now I'm going to add texture to this background of the rise and grind. So I'm going to duplicate that. And again, I'm going to work with it on this side. So now that I have it over here, I'm going to add the texture the same way I did before. The straight line. Then I want that line to be the dark red, which I grabbed from my color palette. And then you can choose your shader on the right side. So I'm going to go with this one, and I want to make sure it's right above. I'm going to increase the stroke size. That, and then I'm going to bring it up again. So now that we have our textures here, again, we want to bring the rise and grind to the front. So now that we have this above, you're going to go to Object, and you're going to click Compound Path and click Make. And then we're going to select the entire thing and then Control-7 and yes. And then we have our texture added. Now what you can do here is, again, the color is missing. So again, double tap on our word and then grab the eyedropper tool, and you can click I and then click on the red. So now we have our texture. So you can see like some of our texture is missing from some of these parts. So if you double click, you can actually go in and edit the texture itself. So I'm going to double click. So I have my texture here, and then I want to add a different one below. I think I'm just going to add a color below just so it covers it up. Just like that. There we go. And then again for the S, grab the pen tool. And again, this is all being clipped because I'm working within the clipping mask. And like that, and then I'll double click out, and so that's all working together within the clipping mask. And then I can grab this and bring it all the way over here to go below rise and grind. So I want to place it right above that other one, and then I can delete the one right below it. So now we have our texture, and we want to make sure that rise and grind is in the back. So click Object, Arrange, Send to Back. Now let's add texture to rise and grind, and I will copy it. And again, I want to work with it on the right side. So same process again. The way you add texture is you would grab the pen tool and then draw your line across. And I want this one to be like darker pink. I already saved out a color. And then I'm going to choose my texture. And again, you could play around with the way it looks and then increase the stroke size to add more of that texture to fill up more of that layer. Good, and then I'll replicate it, copy and paste it for above as well. Like
that. And then I want to make sure rise and grind is above. Object, arrange, bring to front so that it's in the front. Make sure it's ungrouped. And then select the entire piece, rise and grind, and then click Object, Compound Path, and Make. Now select all of these layers and Control 7, and now we have our texture. So again, our color is missing. Just double click on the word, and then grab the eyedropper tool, eye, and then the pink. So now our texture is on the lettering, and then we can bring it over here and place it on top. And then we can remove that background, that one in the background, and then just place this one right on top, just like that. So now we have our texture added to rise and grind, and you can see that was super, super easy. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add texture to my little ribbon here, and again, I'm going to copy and paste it. I want to make this one entire color, and I want it to be this yellow we have up here. And then I'll reduce the stroke size. And then again, if I want to add texture, I'm going to grab the pen tool and then just draw that line. I want it to be a darker color, so I think I'm going to go with this orangey color. And then we choose our texture. Now again, you can reduce the size of that stroke to reduce the size of that texture. And then I'm going to duplicate this, bring it up, and make it a lighter orange. Just like that. And then I want to bring this ribbon above. Object, arrange, bring to front. And then select the whole entire thing and click Control 7. And now we have our texture. And again, just double click on the object. Then grab the eyedropper tool and select a yellow to keep that background. So I'm going to bring this over here and place it in my lettering. And then I can get rid of that layer below. And then for and, I want to make it the background color. So I'm going to grab that color and make it and that background color so it looks like it's going through the ribbon. And then I'm going to add textures to my stars. So I'm going to select them all. And then I want to grab a really simple texture on this right side. So these are the stroke textures. And I'm going to reduce the size of those. I think that looks good. And then I want to make them certain colors. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those colors. So it's making the stroke bigger. So I'm going to reduce the size every time I add a color. So that looks good. Now I want to add some textures to the background. So I want to add like little more fluffy cloud textures to the background. So I'm going to create a new layer on the background. So right above the background, I have this other layer that's already there. And then this is where I'm going to create these really cool shapes. So I want to create like a bubbly cloud shape. So I'm going to create a shape, something like this. And then I'm going to grab the smoothing brush tool and I'm going to smooth out those strokes. Just smoothing out the path here. Just like that. And then I want to bring it in the back just to see where I would place it. Something like that. Looks good. And then I want to add a texture to it. So again, grabbing the pen tool, going right above it. And this time I want it to be white with the no fill. And then we're going to select the shader. Okay, so we have this one. I'm going to pull it down a bit. And then I want to bring my shape above, object, arrange, bring to front, and then Control 7, select it all. And then I want to place this right below, right here, just like that. And then I'm going to duplicate this again, the same layer, but this time I want to add a different shader. So I'm going to pick from here for my shaders. Just like that. Then I'm going to pull it over here. I want this one to go right with the clouds. So I'm trying to fit it in there with the clouds. I'm going to change this to fit more in with this cloud. Just like that. And then I want to bring a little bump down here. And then I'm going to grab my smoothing tool and then just smooth it out. Just like that. So now it looks like these clouds are more fluffy. This looks already really good, but I want to add one last texture to really make it stand out. So I'm going to go to my layers panel and I'm going to go to the very top layer. I've already added this layer, so there's nothing on here, but if you don't have this layer already added, just add a new layer to the very top. I'm going to lock all of them below. But before I do that, I want to grab this cloud layer. So I'm going to go back to that layer. I'm going to select this one at the very bottom, Control Copy, and just copy that layer, and I'll lock it, and then I'll go to the top, and then click Control V to paste it. So then I'm going to flip this around, and I want to put it right on grind, and then I'm going to reduce the opacity to something like that because I just want the top of grind to have this texture, and then I'll just play with the points. I'll play with the anchors right here to just make sure that it's only on top of grind, and then just add anchors accordingly. So that looks good, and I just want to bring this in more because I don't really want this all on the outside of my clouds. Just like that. I'm just trying to add it inside the clouds. Just bringing all these anchors in. And then again, grabbing my smoothing tool over here. And I'm just going to smooth out those paths. And just like that. And then I'm going to reduce the opacity a bit more, about 20%. And that looks good. And there we go. So now our piece is done. And now you know how to add textures to your lettering by using clipping masks and using shaders. So again, this piece is ready to go. I'm accomplishing the same type of aesthetic by using Illustrator and using shaders. And this brush pack comes with 52 different shaders. So that's really cool. You have the option of, choosing a variety of different shaders to add to your lettering. And it's really simple, just adding these shaders to your lettering instead of having to go and use Procreate. So just in case you're somebody out there that doesn't have Procreate and maybe doesn't have access to an iPad, this is a really cool way to create that same aesthetic using Illustrator.